channel. Huge disclaimer right off the bat. I am not kidding when I say disturbing in the title. I racked my brain for seriously some of the most unsettling experiences I have had with ghosts and possessions and entities and paranormal. So this is not for children. I would actually highly recommend anyone under maybe 16 not to watch this video. I know that some of you play this in your house openly, or maybe you watch it with your family or your kids, and that's cool, and most of the time that's fine. But this one is definitely not for the faint of heart, so I highly recommend you watch this at a different time if you are sort of openly watching this with children around. And then also just a really big disclaimer, there is reports of, it's disturbing. It is. And, you know, some of these things include just death and other things that can be very disturbing for some viewers. Also, in this episode, there will be talks of sexual trauma and what is it called? End of life type of things. Anyway, it gets pretty intense. So if that's not your cup of tea, no big deal. I know not everyone on this channel is into sort of the paranormal and the creepy stuff. This is a good one to skip. If you're all about the paranormal and ghost stories and entities and possessions and like that's your jam, then this is the right video to watch. I figured I would put together a spooky episode for this week because we've got Halloween coming up. And what I do for a living has a darker side. And I think that there's actually a lot of educational moments in the stories that I'm going to be sharing. I also wanted to put out there too, I did get permission. I know this is going to sound really weird, but whatever. I have to state it. I got permission from the spirits involved in these stories to mention these stories because they are very intense and emotional, and I don't want to use someone's trauma as entertainment. Despite what some people say about remote viewing and that being breaking some trust and boundaries, I have a very high spiritual morality. I always ask permission from someone's higher self or conscious self before ever looking into information. And when it comes to even just client stories or ghost stories, I also ask permission. And then the other thing that I've done, just for a little bit of energetic, healthy boundaries today, is when we listen to real stories, real accounts, and when we watch scary movies, it can have a negative impact on us. And so I wanted to make sure that today, despite these being 3 very disturbing accounts and cases of encounters that I've personally had, I've kind of put a little bubble energetically. Just know that I've done the work to clear the energy from each one of these cases mentioned. So there's no residual energy that should affect you, if that makes sense, okay? And if you do like paranormal and spooky stuff, definitely make sure you subscribe to the channel because my life is weird and I love sharing these personal stories. So this is a really fun video for me to make. Yeah, super fun. And what else did I want to mention? I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's just talk about ghosts and spirits and entities for a second. I kind of want to define them because there is a difference and not everyone knows the difference between, okay? So first of all, ghosts or spirits, but I'll refer to them as ghosts today, are essentially souls who have left their body and have not crossed over. So essentially there's a fragment of them that is still sort of tethered or stuck to this realm. I kind of call it the liminal space, or sometimes I refer to it as purgatory. Maybe that's because I grew up with a Catholic background, but it is sort of a space where they're stuck. And what I do, and what I've always done as a medium, because I do a lot of mediumship work as well, and I want to talk about that a little bit before getting into these disturbing cases, is I always cross a ghost or a spirit over. I can go to a hotel, I can drive by a cemetery, and basically I encounter ghosts in my daily life all the time, and I don't talk about it, and I've encountered ghosts and spirits in my daily life all the time since I was a very young child. It took me a little while, but pretty much after the age of probably 20 years old, I took the responsibility to ensure that every time I encountered a ghost or a spirit, I would always cross over that ghost or spirit into the light, make sure that they're in a good place. If they wanted to, I would never push them into that, but I would give them the opportunity. So just know that I'm like highly against the paranormal ghost hunting shows. And let me tell you, I have been invited to so many Discovery and History Channel ghost hunting shows before as the main ghost hunter. And I can't do it. And the reason why I can't do it is I cannot use ghosts and spirits as entertainment. There is something so gross and icky about that. Let's go ahead and anger the spirits of this location so that we get a really great shot or a really great moment on camera. And then let's just like peace out. It just feels really wrong, and I just can't be a part of it. So I've always said no to those opportunities, but I've always had ghosts and spirits in my life. And then I just want to define entities as well. So an entity can really be any energy that is, what did I put here? I wrote it down. Yeah, energetic being operating from a frequency of fear. So we're talking about dark entities. I know that there's a lot of people who use the word entities in a variety of ways. Let's just go ahead and talk about dark entities today. And then typically these dark entities feed off of other beings' lower vibrational emotions, emotions like anger and shame and anxiety, and essentially those lower emotional states fuel these entities. And the word entities can really be attached to poltergeist type experiences. They can be attached to parasitic type entities. Sometimes the entities are earthbound, and sometimes they are definitely not of this planet, but they are hanging around, all right? That is a whole world that I have experienced, not willingly, definitely not willingly, but I've been thrown into that world, honestly, since a child, and I've been navigating it since then. And I want to mention that as a remote viewer, once you learn how to get out of your body and experience the realms beyond the embodied realm, you start to encounter ghosts and spirits and entities, and you learn the darker side as well as the lighter side of this reality through the 12 dimensions. So it does get pretty wild. All right, let's just dive right into the first story. Today I have 3 stories for you. They're all very disturbing. So please, once again, like fair warning, this is not going to be a video for everyone, but I do think that there are sort of things to learn from each one of these stories. The third one is going to be the most disturbing. I'm going to try and keep the gruesome details at a minimum, but despite that, they are all really like unsettling stuff. But like I said, it is spooky season. Let's get into it. All right, so the first one is, they're not fun. None of these are fun stories, but it's cool to sort of recount this time in my life. So when I was about, I want to say 20, maybe 19, 20 years old, I was full on into, remote viewing, deep states of meditation, astral projection, lucid dreaming, past life regression, reading auras. I mean, you name it, I was there and into all of it. One of the things that I ended up doing for, I would say, about a year is I don't want to call myself a ghost hunter, but I would remove entities and possessions and poltergeists from homes. So I was in school at the time, I was in university, and to make some extra money on the side, I decided to put myself out there as this sort of entity remover. And so I lived in Canada at the time. I used the website Kijiji, believe it or not, which is essentially the Canadian version of Craigslist, to put out my services. Hey, this is who I am, this is what I do. I think I was super cheap too. Pay me $60 and I will come to your house and I will remove the entities from your house and I will guarantee it. And if you have any other issues or paranormal issues moving forward, I will come back free of charge, right? That was my deal. And I did this, and I drove a motorcycle at the time, so I would ride up to people's houses and with my sage bundle and geared up for whatever I was about to encounter. So one of these encounters was really interesting and, like I said, quite disturbing. So I ride up to this house, take off my motorcycle gear, and the second I walk into this house, I am honestly immediately confused because there are pictures of Jesus everywhere. Like, we are talking like crosses everywhere. Those like sort of metallic-y, shiny pictures of Jesus, like everywhere. And then I'm not even kidding you, okay? There is a full-on replica, full-size baby Jesus in a cradle. This is not Christmas time, okay? On the coffee table. And so we go to the living room and we sit down on the couch, and I'm sitting with a man and a woman, and I'm looking around and I'm immediately thinking, why am I here? Because you're clearly very religious, and I guess in some extreme religions, possession and exorcisms are a thing. But I was confused. Here I am with my sage bundle, And so we sit down and I said, tell me what's going on in your house. And they said, well, this has been going on since we bought the house, which has been about 2 years now. And recently the activity has increased dramatically, and it's really making us feel unsettled. So they were talking about cupboards in their kitchen slamming, opening and closing, especially at nighttime. They were talking about hearing not just footsteps walking around constantly, but like sounds of like scratching and sometimes screaming in the background. Doors would open and close on their own. Objects would move and sometimes even fly off of shelves and break, like a cup or something like that. And they were scared. I mean, this poor couple, like, this is a full sort of poltergeist type of experience. And so I knew that probably part of their reliance on Jesus and God was because of the poltergeist type of experience that they were having at the home, which is fine. I mean, I do believe in Jesus. I believe he was an ascended master. I believe in calling upon him when you need a little bit of extra love. So I'm down with that. But whatever they were doing was not working. So I said, okay, do you have any history of this house? Do you have any documentation of this house? No. I mean, as far as we know, there's been nothing sort of that has gone on in this house. All right, great. Okay, well, I told them, I said, you can follow me around the house or you can stay here, but I'm going to go ahead and burn this sage. And as I walk around, I'm going to stop in each room. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to tune into the energy and I'm going to see what I see. And typically when I close my physical eyes, I can open my third eye and take a look at things energetically. And this is when I encounter ghosts and spirits and entities and other things. So I do this, and they wanted to follow me around. All right. So there was nothing in the main level of their house. There was nothing in the basement of their house. And at this point, I'm kind of confused and honestly a little bit worried because I'm thinking, I'm not seeing anything. I don't see a ghost. I don't see a spirit. I don't see a portal that's opened. What if I can't help this couple and they're so scared and they're clearly using me as a last resort from some random ad on Kijiji? And then we got to their upper level of their house. It was a very small house. Their upper level had 3 bedrooms, and that was it. It was 3 bedrooms and then a bathroom. And it was like a small hallway, and each bedroom was quite small. And the second I got upstairs, there was a chill that came through. And I close my eyes, and I see very clearly, how do I put this? It was almost as if I was taken back in time, and an entire scene played out in front of me, just like it had whenever that took place, 5 years ago or what have you. And unfortunately, what I saw was a young man who was probably around the age of 16 or 17 years old, very brutally murdering his entire family, which consisted of his mother and father and younger sister. And it was the one room off to the left that was the worst. That was the first room with both his dad and his mom. And I believe the weapon that he used was, I want to say it was an axe. It was something that was handheld and sharp. So yeah, it was definitely an axe because of the way that he was using it. So he ended up killing his father first, and then moving on to his mother, and then went into his sister's room, found her, did the same, and then he ended up taking his own life. And I am seeing this play out in front of me. Typically, I will see a ghost or a spirit or an entity, and I will ask the entity questions to gain access to the information or the story or the trauma. And in this case, I just saw it playing out. Like, I saw the way that the room was set up, I saw that the scene playing out. And as I'm seeing this, I'm wondering, do I verbalize what I'm seeing? Do I tell this poor couple what happened in their home? And they're clearly very religious. And I did. I was totally honest. And I went from room to room, and I told them what had happened, because there was a death in each of the rooms, and then he took his own life in his own room. And so then I told them what had happened there. And then I told them that I'm going to see if there are any spirits from that event, from that trauma, that I can help cross over. And yes, indeed, there were. There were 4 spirits altogether, 4 ghosts altogether. 3 of them were the mother, the father, and the sister, and they were all just very scared and essentially hiding. Like, if you could hide as a ghost, they were hiding. And then there was the very troubled young man who was essentially the poltergeist or the entity. And he was the one causing all of the ruckus. He was angry. He was confused. He was, I don't want to say, well, yeah, guilty, full of shame. He was unsettled, like extremely unsettled. And what I've found through doing a lot of clearings, possession, entity removals from both people and locations, and I've done many of these, is that entities are just dark souls that are misunderstood. And one thing that they need the most is for someone to listen to their side. And so oh yeah, okay. Yeah, it's coming back to me. I was like, who did I cross over first? So interestingly enough, I went to the mother, the father, and the little girl. I was able to cross over the little girl quite quickly and quite easily. She was ready to go, but she also wanted to make sure that her parents were going to go with her. And I said, yes, if you cross over first, I'll make sure that they follow you and they come to where you're going. Like, you won't be alone, right? Like, they wanted to stay together, essentially, which is kind of sad. but also not, because that makes sense. So I go to the three of them first, cross over the little girl. She was ready to go. She wanted to make sure her parents were coming with them. I talked to the mother and the father, and what was so fascinating is that they wanted to make sure that their son would cross over as well. And I just thought that that was so, I don't know if profound is the right word, but the amount of forgiveness and compassion that you have to have as a soul to want your son who did this to you to also cross over is, I don't know. I think that that's just like so honorable. And so they actually would not leave, like they would not cross over until I helped their son cross over first. And they were worried about him because even as a soul and a spirit attached to the house, he was angry, he was misunderstood, he was confused. So I went to him. And when I went to him and I talked to him, he mentioned that for many months leading up to that moment, I mean, one of the things that he mentioned is, I didn't mean to do it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I didn't mean to do it. I really loved them. They really loved me. It wasn't my choice. And what he explained to me was that there was actually an entity attachment, so a low vibrational energy attachment that had clung on to him in the months following up to this moment, this night, this tragic event. And the entity was telling him every single night, you know, you've got to do this. You've got to kill your family. I don't know necessarily. I don't remember. It was a long time ago now. But essentially, the entity just kept on him about it, and he got more depressed and more anxious and more withdrawn and more angry and more just low vibrational. And eventually, he ended up leaving his body that night. The entity took over his body, which is part of the possession part. And in doing so, he blacked out. And the entity caused absolute mayhem. I know that I never talked to the entity. I think nowadays I would also kind of try and talk to the entity or get the entity's perspective too, as to why the entity even did that to begin with. I obviously just dealt directly with the family members and this poor, I mean, it's hard to say that this young man is a victim in this, but this happens all the time. And if you're a fan of true crime, you know that there are a lot of cases where someone blacks out and does something absolutely horrific that they would never previously do. So whether you're religious or just open-minded, this is something that happens. And we're going to get into more possession and more ghost stories and more of this in the next story. And so I listened to this young man's story, and I told him that he is forgiven and that his parents love him. And once again, a lot of these spirits, a lot of these poltergeists, a lot of these entities, they just need to be listened to. And I told him that his parents would not cross over and join his sister unless he crossed over first. And I said to him that he is forgiven. And with that, he left. I opened up a white light portal. He walked through. He joined his sister. Oh, it gives me chills just thinking back to it. They both started crying. His parents witnessed all of that. They then crossed over. I am verbally relaying this to the two people who own this house, who are clearly very religious. And so I crossed the parents. Everyone's now reunited on the other side. I give a very, very thorough smudging and clearing to every room of the house. And I told the couple there, I said, I think it's important for you to talk to your realtor to see if you can look up the history of this house. And if you have any more poltergeist type experiences, please give me a call and I will come back free of charge and I will do what I can to clear it. Well, about a month later, I get a call from them and I'm thinking to myself, all right, here we go. you know, whatever, I'm going to have to go back there, or they're experiencing it again. And they tell me that they did a little bit of digging. And the original realtor that sold them that house did not disclose that information, which I think is against the law, or there was something in there that, yeah. And they were like, this is why the house was so cheap, and this is why we jumped on it, and this was why we thought it was perfect. And so they ended up finding and validating what had happened in that house with what I had seen and experienced. And then I asked them, of course, are you guys okay? And how has the activity been in your home? And they validated that there has been no activity, no door slamming, no moving of objects, no night terrors at all, no walking around, nothing since I came to that house. And they said, we can't thank you enough. And I said, okay, fantastic, I did my job. And honestly, for me, it was less about showing up for that couple, which I'm glad that I did, because that feels scary and violating. It was more about showing up for the family that was stuck there, and also that young man who was misunderstood and scared at the end of the day, okay? All right, let's move on to our next super disturbing case. And like I said, just trigger warning, guys. This one deals with mental health stuff. It deals with also body dysmorphia stuff, and it deals with entity possession. So I'm just putting it out there. All right, so this next case also happened, this was probably maybe about 6 years ago or 7 years ago now. And I had a client. At the time I was giving one-on-one sessions. I don't do that anymore, so please do not email me about that. I was giving client sessions, and one of my clients had a daughter, and her daughter had been struggling with anorexia for, honestly, almost her whole life. Since about the age of maybe 12 years old, she had struggled with body dysmorphia and eating and purging, binging and purging and all of that. And she had been on the verge of dying for years, at the point where I started working with her parents. And, we talked about the soul contracts, we talked about the lessons, we talked about what could be done, how they could best support her, what she's learning, what they're learning, her soul contracts, all of that, some past lifetimes that involved eating and food. We went over all of that. I did the best that I could with the hour session that I had. I had a couple of sessions with them. It was a couple of months after those initial sessions where I had a very vivid dream. And in this dream, I can still remember it just like it was yesterday. In this dream, I drive up to this house. It was so vivid. It was so vivid. I drive up to this house, and as I drive up to the house and I get out of the car, there is a woman who was my client who opens the front door of the house and says, "Elizabeth, please come on in. Like, we need your help." And I said, "Okay, that's what I'm here for." And I walk into the house, and they said she's in her room. And she was probably, I'm back. Yes. Okay, I'm back. Yes. Okay, I was almost about to stop this and turn it back on again. Sorry about that, guys. Things get weird when you talk about paranormal stuff. So, I walk into this house in this dream, mind you, very vivid dream, and they say she's in her room, she's in the corner. Walk into her room, and her back is facing me, and she's crouched over into a fetal position. And I recognize this. This is my client. This is their daughter. And all my sessions with them had been over Zoom, so this was my first sort of physical encounter, but it felt so real. And as I step into this room and I try talking to this girl, like I said, 17 or 18 years old, there is this dark black entity that comes out of her, like almost like a smoke entity that emerges out of her. And it talks to me, and it said, I will never leave her, but if you want, I will trade her life for yours. If you let me attach to you, I will leave her. And you can save her, but I need you. And I'm not even kidding. I was close to saying yes because I just wanted to save her life. And I just felt like she was on the verge of dying. And I felt like I could handle it. And I was so close. And eventually I said, no, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I can't do that. And it like came at me. And as it came at me, I woke up from the dream. And I never reached out to that client to tell them about this dream. But what I did do is I energetically went over to this girl, asked permission to be there, and I tried to talk the entity out of her body. At that point, I didn't realize that her struggles were actually directly being caused by this energetic entity attachment. And so I did white light, I did energetic healing, I tried to bubble her, I tried to cut cords with the entity, I talked to her higher self, I asked about the soul contracts between her and the entity, and essentially her higher self told me that there was nothing more that I could do. I could give light and love and support and safety from a distance, which is what her parents could do for her. But ultimately, it was up to this girl to find it in her, to want to live, to stand up for herself, to say no to the entity, and to take sovereignty and freedom over her body once again. She needed to do that for herself. I had one more session with her parents, and I told them that. This is her choice. She needs to choose life. And they told me, we know. There is nothing more we can do. And I'm glad that they knew that. And it's kind of sad, especially being a parent now. And so the struggle went on. She would get better, and then she would get worse, and then she would get better, and she would choose to live, and then she would not. And unfortunately, it's about 3 years later, after those sessions and that dream, she ended up passing away from her illness. And I did a whole session with the parents, with the sisters, with the family, essentially individual sessions with the family, made sure she crossed over, recorded that, sent that out to everyone, gave them the closure. On the other side, this soul, right, this girl, was able to talk about her experience with her diagnosis and this entity and basically the lessons and the contracts. And she was at peace. Essentially, when she was able to cross over, she found her peace. And what was so beautiful, okay, there's a bit of a happy ending here. As a soul now, as a ghost, or not a ghost, as a soul, as a free soul, she has decided to dedicate herself in the afterlife to coming back to the planet, to being a spirit guide for other young girls who are just about to enter down the road of mental health and like physical illnesses as well. I forget what they're called, but body dysmorphic type of things. And so she's now stepping in as the spirit guide to talk to these young women to say, you're better than this, and you deserve life, and you deserve happiness, and don't listen to the internet or whatever, right? So that was really beautiful, and it was really nice for her family to hear that as well, that she's now dedicating herself to taking the lessons that she learned, and she did learn, and giving that to others. All right. I'm kind of wondering if I go into this last story or not. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Even the fact that I'm unsure makes me feel like I shouldn't, because it is actually it's just really, really disturbing and unsettling, but there's such an important lesson to it. So here's what I'm gonna do, because we're at a good time now too. I'm gonna give you the lesson of the last story, and I'm gonna skip over the story itself. And I know that, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I said this is the most disturbing one, and it is. And it's something that is so disturbing that it's stuck with me not my entire life, but since it's happened. So I'm gonna save you the mental load of this next story. I wanna mention to you too that as a remote viewer, as a past life regressionist, as someone who has dealt with entities, possessions, ghosts, and spirits, literally since I was born. Like, we are talking like ghosts and spirits walking around me since I was yay high, okay? And now I'm like yay high. Yeah, so I have seen a lot. Like, just think about past life regression alone. I have seen, at this point, I would estimate thousands of lifetimes. We are talking about entire incarnations from the point of birth to the point of death. I have seen rituals. I have seen abuse. I have seen trauma. I have seen torture. I have seen murder over and over, and I've seen persecution over and over and over again, vividly. Like, we are talking like you're watching a movie, okay? That's why I'm gonna skip this last story, because based on everything that I've seen thousands of times over, this one takes the cake, and I'm just gonna save you that mental load. That being said, I wanna talk about the really important lesson that was embodied in this last case. So I'm gonna talk about it generally. Me and a bunch of friends went to Montreal, and this was in, I wanna say maybe 2016. And we rented out a castle. I know, weird. I don't know who does that, okay? We're like, let's go to Montreal, let's rent this castle. There was maybe like 10 of us, and it was a massive castle. We could have had 25 of us. And it was expensive, and there was a lot of rules and regulations. Anyway, little did I know, okay? I did not even think about it. I thought I was gonna go out at night and party and drink and have a great time and, you know, party in this castle. No, okay? As a medium, you don't go to a castle and think you're gonna have a really good time. Immediately we get there, we start drinking, and all of a sudden I am inundated with ghosts and spirits freaking everywhere. Like, this place was full of them to the brim. And at this point, I was pretty intoxicated, and so what's interesting about being a medium or being able to see ghosts is, and I learned this at a young age, when you observe a ghost or a spirit, they see you see them. I don't know how else to put that, but they know that you can see them. Even if you don't have like a shocked look on your face, for some reason, they know that. And so they all came to me, like there was a crowd of them huddled around me. And that first night I told them, I will do my best to listen to your stories and help you the best that I can. I will help you cross over, but I think it's inappropriate that I'm intoxicated right now. I mean, I wasn't like sloppy drunk, but I was like, 18, 19 years old, or however, maybe 21 at that point. And I just thought it was inappropriate to be intoxicated and do that kind of work. So I said, look, let me have a night, let me sober up, and tomorrow I will sit down with hopefully as many of you as I can. And I didn't get to all of them the next day. I got to a lot of them. the absolute darkest spirit there, to the point where I didn't think it was a ghost. I thought it was a poltergeist. I thought it was an entity. I thought it was a possession. I thought it was something from a different realm. Okay? The darkest thing in that castle. I decided to talk to it. Turns out it was a him. And he gave me his whole life story. And like I said, I'm not going to talk about it because it is just very sad and disturbing. Turns out, okay, that this poor man who looked like a monster. So to everyone else at that time, he was observed as an absolute monster. And he ended up dying looking like a monster. But no one understood how he got there. And when you listen to his whole story, it turns out that he was probably the biggest victim of all. He was completely misunderstood. And because he was so misunderstood, because no one would listen to him, no one would believe him, he just got more and more separated from light and more separated from love, and just got darker and darker and more disturbed. And I'm telling you that I was able to peel back the darkness, peel back the layers of this individual, of this entity. And I was able to really humanize him. And he had been stuck there in that castle for a very long time. And finally, after a long time, I was able to cross him over into the light because I told him that he was forgiven. And all he needed was someone to listen to him. And I was that person at that time. And I was able to cross over some other spirits that were not as dark. But what I learned from that, what I took from that, is that some of the darkest energies in this world and in other dimensions and realms are actually some of the brightest souls, just completely misunderstood. We've got to realize that within the law of polarity, the intensity of light is only ever matched by the intensity of darkness. And at the end of the day, light and dark are simply two sides of the same coin. And if I had any fear, any apprehension, if I had any anxiety about entities, attachments, and possessions, or ghosts and spirits before that moment, before that night, before transmuting and listening and having compassion for this dark entity and realizing his story and how he got there, all of that went away. All of that fear left me that day because I realized that they are just missing that love themselves. And they are looking to project that darkness on others so that they are simply understood. And I've applied the same sentiment to people in my life who are narcissistic, who are dark, who are ego-centered, who are even considered evil or bad or, malicious. And I just understand that they're learning something. And that we're all just learning something. And that no one's ever perfect. And that no one is ever just purely of the light. And if they claim that they are, then that's fucking bullshit. And I can say that because kids aren't on this. All right? We all have light and dark within us. We do. And there's no need to be angry or upset or triggered or scared or anxious or guilty or shameful. And there's also no need to be attached to light and love and abundance and butterflies and 5D. Because on either end of the coin, you're missing the point of existence. Existence, incarnation, presence. It's a spectrum. And when we can show up to fully observe and experience that spectrum without any attachment or aversion, we are showing up for the full experience of what we signed up for, which is all of it. Okay, that's it. Those are my stories. Coming up this Saturday, I've got a coaching call. So if you're interested in what I do, and if you want to see me live remote view, and a lot of mediumship stuff comes through these coaching calls, then please go ahead and tune in. The coaching calls happen the first and third Sunday of every month, but it is for members only. So sign up. Where there's a 7-day free trial, sign up as a member right now. Tune into the coaching calls. They are always a good time. We go into cosmic things, we go into past lives, we go into lessons, we go into blocks, we go into career stuff, mission stuff, mediumship stuff. If you want to see me live in action, you want to check out these coaching calls. And I love them because I get to interface one-on-one with all of you, and it's a good time. And then coming up on Saturday, we've got a live anxiety book reading. So this is going to be the first time I am reading anything publicly from my new anxiety book called Your Anxiety is Giving Me Anxiety. So if you do have anxiety and you're looking for a little bit of reprieve, please tune in. It's a completely free event to absolutely everyone who needs it. It'll be about a 30-minute live book reading and then another 30 minutes of Q&A. So hop into the Zoom room, or hopefully I can live stream it on YouTube. That's happening Saturday, November 1st at 1 p.m. PST. And then we've got another live anxiety book reading coming up on November 25th as well. And that recording will be posted to YouTube and to my website for free for everyone. So I'm really excited for that, and I'm excited to share all of my spiritual insights on mental health and especially anxiety. I love you guys so much. Have a great Halloween week. Be sure to like this video, share it with some paranormal, spooky friends you've got, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Love you guys so, so much. Keep up the good work. Bye for now.